This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, I am thrilled to welcome the colossal force in fantasy football podcasting, the fearless leader of the fantasy football underworld, the founder of Player Profiler. It's the Podfather himself, Matt Kelley. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Feels great, man. Feels great. Oh, the award-winning Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. What a pleasure. It's a good thing you had Matthew Berry on before you beat him at the FSGA conference. There was like 3 different Matthew Berry shows from Fantasy Life. Fantasy Life, an incredible resource for fantasy football. And there were 3 shows nominated just from Fantasy Life. And there was a whole bunch of other shows. And guess who walked away with the trophy?
Hey, man.
Kevin Murray.
It happened. I was there. It was special.
I was there. It happened.
You were there.
Big trophy. I saw them give it to you.
Yeah, but what people don't know is that room was filled with actors. I paid off a bunch of people. I got some votes. Got the votes I needed. Fantasy Life canceled themselves out. And here we are. Here we are.
I can't be paid off. You can't. I was there. I'm not one. My presence cannot be bought.
Oh, I love it. I love it. No, good times. And I appreciate all the kind words. I appreciate connecting with you there. What you may not know is that you and I, we go way back. I looked at our friendship on Facebook. It's like 2018. So news to me, news to you now, right? Breaking news.
Hey, I love going to these conferences because you end up meeting people that you don't expect. Like, oh, I hoped I can meet the head of business development at the big company X, right? And then, okay. And then actually it turns out the people you meet are like the dude with a podcast everyone's talking about that you haven't heard of, but now you have, and you are subscribing and listening to it every week. That's the guy. That's the reason why you go to those conferences.
I love it. Well, it was awesome to see you there. I know you haven't been in recent years. Glad you made it back. Obviously you were there. Great presence. Got to see you on stage promoting a new product. We're going to get into that a little bit. Resources, to me, it's the key, and I love sharing ones. So Player Profiler, phenomenal resource in the industry. For people that don't know what that is, in the words of Matt Kelley, how would you describe what Player Profiler is?
Player Profiler provides as much free data on a football player and free data that is fantasy relevant as you're going to find anywhere else. There's a lot of resources out there, but oftentimes you have to subscribe and sometimes you have to pay a lot of money. And one of the reasons why we rolled out Player Profiler and we launched it, the thing that was so disruptive about it originally was back then, like PFF was incredibly expensive. I don't know if you remember, but we're talking about $500 plus to get access to. Now they at some point, I would like to think that we pressured some of these other services to come out with price packages that were actually reasonable. So I take some credit for that for sure. And to this day, like this, any stat you want to look up, yards per route run. And, we have a whole bunch of proprietary metrics like production premium, sophisticated efficiency metrics. They're all right there for free. If you want to aggregate them all, if you want to, manipulate the stats and you want to compare and contrast across positions and across 10 years of data, we have a data analysis package, which is only $45. And anyone that's like, hey, $45, I don't know. And I'm like, you got to see what PFF used to cost before we came along, and then you'll appreciate it.
And it's such a beautiful web. I mean, it's so user friendly. Like the experience on that website, it's so clean, smooth. Like it's such a fantastic resource in the industry. I can't say enough about what I've seen using that over the years. And you just recently, like I said, went on the main stage at FSGA, the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association conference, to share about a new product called Fast Draft. Can you explain what that is and the impact that you think that'll have on the industry?
I can't explain too much yet. I'm not ready to go all the way out there promoting the product. I teased it for 3 minutes. I teased it at the FSGA conference. That's the most I'm going to do. All right. The bottom line is there needs to be a new fantasy gaming app. It's been many years, And the only fantasy gaming apps that have been coming out since 2020, right? Underdog came out 2020. So Underdog was a killer app, right? Killer fantasy app, changed the game, changed best ball forever. And since Underdog, it's been crickets for those of us that want pure fantasy. If you love pick'em games, then there's a new app for you every month. But if you love fantasy football, where you love a live draft experience, if you want to play best ball, it's been, nothing new has come along in a long time. And, DraftKings has best ball now. It's like, great. Thanks, DraftKings. Now I have to go to DraftKings. I don't want to open DraftKings. Don't make me. Oh God. I have to try to find my way through this thing. Trying to find where the best ball is. So we're trying to, just like we did with Player Profiler, just distill it down to what people want. They want to look up players. Boom, Player Profiler, right? People want to draft. Boom, Fast Draft. It's going to be the fastest best ball app on the planet. There's a lot of new, super innovative and, formats that are many, iterations removed from anything that exists right now. So, it's not like a reproduction of something that is on the market now or had been previously. This is something totally new, a whole new way of drafting, a whole new way of experiencing fantasy football. And one thing that we are going to do, which I think is super cool, is the time clock is going to matter. And the reason why we did this is because, in the Scott Fish Bowl, everyone complains about being in the slowest league, right? Like if you're in the draft room that you're still and then everyone's on social media making fun of the time to pick, right?
Yeah. It takes 3 weeks.
That's right. And in My Fantasy League they actually post the average time to pick on the My Fantasy League homepage. And that's that information gets pulled down. And the people at Spike Week and Roto Grinders, they were surfacing that was part of their Scott Fish Bowl tool. And that was the thing people were fixated on, like the average time to pick. So what we want to do is reward people that are drafting fast. I appreciate a good slow draft because I don't have a lot of time to do, let's say, a 50-minute draft. But I can do a slow draft. But inevitably, slow drafts are super frustrating because you have guys that are taking 8 hours sometimes to pick. And then, are they going to, then they stop the clock at night, right? So so if there's 8 hours at night, no picks are happening. The guy gets on the clock at 8 a.m., doesn't pick for another 8 hours, right? And then it's like, okay, so I don't think there's a big market for slow drafts. I do think there's a big market for fast drafts. So if you could imagine a world where you can draft it every draft room, you're in there for less than 10 minutes, right? That's nice. The idea. And so basically reverse engineering, what kind of best ball games can we do where you're drafting in less than 10 minutes? And as it turns out, there's a ton of formats, if you think creatively, for fantasy football that where you can be drafting, when you're in line to pick up your kid. There's a whole bunch of situations where I have 8 minutes. I have 10 minutes. I just don't have an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And so that's the direction we decided to go in. We realized that, the market's been, begging for something that's pure fantasy. And what's interesting is that, when we talk to these states, like we're already, some people launch just with the 20 states that are unregulated first and they kind of feel it out. We've already been, we've submitted like 10 license applications already. And we've got a bunch back and approved already. And you have phone calls. It's not just you just submit the paperwork, but the people from the gaming commissions, they'll call you and talk to you about your game because they want to understand it. They want to make sure it's cool. They want to make sure that you're, meeting the standards for their consumer protections. That's what they're all about.
Yeah.
And it's just funny when you can just tell when you talk to them, you can tell they're like, oh, so this is like traditional fantasy football. Oh, this is like real fantasy football. And my response though was like, as opposed to what? And they were like, well, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what people are trying to say is fantasy now. Right. But this is fast. This is easy, but it's real fantasy. And I'm like, can you imagine that it's like a breath of fresh air, a real fantasy app coming along? And these people, it's literally they've been waiting years, right? They've been waiting years for there to be a fantasy app to come along, and just they don't have to, kind of dig into the mechanics of the game to understand, is this actually fantasy or not? And then is there a legal opinion about whether this is actually fantasy? It's 50. Let's flip a coin if this is actually fantasy or not. Where they're like, oh no, there's a live draft room. Oh, you can set your rankings. You can draft. Like, it's like, yeah, like how fantasy football works.
That's exciting. Obviously, exciting things to come. That's the bottom line.
Fast
draft.
So I said 3 minutes. So it was probably longer than that.
No, it was great.
It's not live yet. So that's the thing. I don't want to go too hard promoting this thing, because there's a cliche I'm not going to use about chickens and eggs. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to say it.
I love it.
I'm going to cliche alert myself in advance, but I'm not going to do that. So we're hoping for a April, worst case scenario, a May launch. And the first game is going to be focused on rookies, because when you go to Player Profiler, the trending players are all rookies right now. And even as the summer gets going, it's rookie. The data on Player Profiler suggests that people want to draft rookies.
Yeah, like Romeo Dunze, right?
Romeo Dunze. Yeah, Romeo Dunze and Michael Penix.
Exactly. Hey, I'm a Washington guy. They're just 35 minutes from me, so I love that duo.
Those are my two favorite names to mispronounce.
I love it. I love hearing that.
Michael Penix, fun player. Romeo Dunze. You agree? Romeo Dunze is a better name than Rome Odunze, right?
Off the tongue, it's just much smoother for sure.
Way smoother. So yeah, we want you to be able to make that decision. We want to put a draft in front of people, a game in front of people. We are going to have to make a decision. Are you going to go Romeo Dunze, or are you going to go Michael Penix? It's going to be up to you.
We'll see. So what was your professional background before you dove into this industry?
So I was in a tech company. We ended up selling it to private equity in my late 20s, early 30s, and then it's very, very cliche. Speaking of cliches, is like, oh, you helped to build a company and then you moved to Connecticut. Like, yeah, I did that. That's what happened. But when I was a kid, I used to live in Maine, and we used to come to Connecticut to visit my family here. So I have some family in the area. And my uncle was a pilot for TWA, so he flew out of JFK. And so I always told and we would come in April. April in Maine is horrific. April in Maine it's still wet and cold and terrible and muddy. Where in Connecticut, the difference between Connecticut and Maine in April is, I don't know about now where things have warmed up, but it used to be like it would be such a godsend to just go to Connecticut and I was like, oh my God, the grass is green. We can play sports outside. It's so amazing. And, even like in Maine, the driveway, the roads, because I would skateboard and things like that. It would be a thick layer of gravel and sand from all the sanding of the roads they do winter, right? It would be bad, right? So everything's a mess. Everything would be a mess. Whereas so I was like, oh my God, I can't wait. One day I'm gonna live in this Monroe, Connecticut. And now I literally live 15 minutes from Monroe, and it was all my wife's decision. My wife wanted to move here because her mom lived here and she ran a school here, wanted our daughter to go to that school. So that's why we came here. And I had to figure out what to do. And I started, experimenting with different, I took a web design job, doing web design, business development, because I love web design and I love product management. That was what I liked most about my job in my 20s, was doing the product design and product management, working with developers, working with designers to to build applications. And so that's the thing I like the best. And so I was like, let me focus on that. And the problem was, man, at that point, that was like 2012, 2013. I couldn't focus. All I was doing all day was fantasy football. It was crazy. And I was like, listen, I think I have to just do fantasy. It's an insult to whoever I'm working for at this point, or my other partners here. I can't do this to them. Like, I'm not putting my all behind this company. All I'm doing, I'm half of my brain is devoted to my fantasy teams. So I've just got to leave. It's the right thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are listening to this podcast right now, and they know damn well, and they're cool with it. And I was cool with it for many years. They know damn well that they are not delivering maximum value to their employer because of fantasy. They know it, and they've come to terms with it, and it's cool. And I had come to terms with it as well. But at some point, it was like a break. It was too much. I was like, I need to leave, and I need to build something that is fantasy focused and hope people like it. And I had never done anything in broadcasting, but my mom, busted out this, whatever it is, like a little journal from when you're in elementary school. And it said that I wanted to live in Connecticut and I wanted to be a radio DJ. And then, so I was like, okay, I guess this is the next step in me becoming what I always wanted to be when I grow up, was I got to learn how to podcast. And so then that's what I started doing. And then Player Profiler kind of became the tool I used as a podcaster, because I could look the player up while I was talking, and then I could cite statistics and everything while I was talking. And then we decided, hey, we should make this public. So then I tried to design it in a way that the public would enjoy navigating to it and checking it out. And then the two things kind of work together, where I would cite Player Profiler on the podcast all the time, and then I would link back to the podcast on Player Profiler. And then it just becomes this flywheel where more people are tuning into the podcast, then more people are visiting the site, and so on. And that's how the growth kind of started. But I really built Player Profiler from the perspective of a podcaster who wanted to just have information easily accessible at my fingertips.
That's awesome.
And, but it was many years, though. It was many years, like
Yeah.
2014. So 10-year anniversary is coming up. 2014, 2015. For 3 years, I didn't have a single monetary method of extracting value. I just gave everything away, right? No ads on the show, nothing, right? And then I think in 2017, I started monetizing. And then the whole point was, and this is a conversation I have with a lot of people here, it's like, listen, I know the thing you're most worried about is how to convince your wife or your girlfriend that this is a good idea. Like, I know, like, for many years, my wife carried me. And basically, I would have a presentation that I would do for her every few months and be like, here's where the business is at. Here's the potential of it. This is when I'm going to start to monetize it. I'm not going to be a bum that you're carrying around in this family forever. Trust me, I have a plan, right, to make this thing be self-sustaining finally. And it happened. And so her faith was rewarded. And that's I talk to people and I'm like, hey, yeah, I know your number one concern is telling your wife that you're at least making some money and spending all this time on this, right? And they're like, yeah, I got to tell my wife I'm making something. I'm like, I know.
Now you're running one of the most impactful sports media platforms there is when it comes to fantasy or football data and analytics. Something, I mean, it's just huge in the fantasy industry, obviously. And it's, all that hard work and dedication. It's paid off. It's paid off. We'll obviously dive a little deeper into Player Profiler. But let's rewind a little bit back further. You had, with this passion for fantasy and sports, you had to have at some point been a big sports fan.
Sure. Yeah, I remember where I was when the Buckner play happened. I saw that on a little 13-inch black and white TV up to camp. My grandfather would always go to Florida, and right about that time he was getting ready. We had one more big dinner up to camp before he left for Florida, and the Red Sox were playing the Mets. And so I remember that very well. That's just one of those moments where I remember where I was, in the basement of this camp watching this little TV. So that was, and then watching the Patriots with my dad and my grandfather, Tony Eason, Irving Fryer, those guys, Lonnie Tippett. It's just different players that I remember. But the thing that I invented fantasy football unknowingly. It existed. I didn't know that there was a thing called rotisserie baseball that people were already playing. And then later on, there was a game, like basically a DFS game in Sporting News, where you could mail in your salary based lineup.
The fantasy challenge. That was the first time I ever played fantasy. 1995 was that Sporting News challenge.
Even before that, predating all that, my friends and I would take football cards and we would have a draft with football cards, and then we would all draft teams. But it was a cross between fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons. Nice. So what would happen is we would all draft these teams, right? Some person would have Thurman Thomas, another person would have Emmitt Smith, another person would have Jim Kelly, another person would have Troy Aikman, Steve Young, down the list, right? But I was the dungeon master, so I would narrate the matchups, and then there would be a tournament, and the teams would play each other like the playoffs, and there would be a Super Bowl. And the funny part of it is my teams always won. It was crazy.
Destiny.
It was crazy how that worked. And, I get together with my friends from Maine. We do these trips sometimes. And one guy had these T-shirts made. It called the football. And then it's something on the back. It was the football card game. He made basically a T-shirt of it. He basically making fun of, I can't remember exactly what it has on the back, but it's basically like, game organizer and perpetual champion, something like that, which was, it was essentially fantasy football and then broadcasting and storytelling about the stats of the players and their performances. So it was, in a microcosm, what I do all day now.
Full circle. I love
that. It was everything I do. It was like we look at the stats, we put the players up, we draft, and then we talk about it. And that's my day.
That's awesome. So what was your worst loss as a sports fan? Was it that Bill Buckner mishap?
No, the thing that I remember the most was the worst thing that I felt became the best thing. I was really at like the peak. I'm on the backside of my sports fandom, which is just a damn shame. It's a damn shame. So you got to remember. So I'm a Patriots fan, and we had those Giants losses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, do you remember the Jermaine Kearse catch where it hit his knee, it hit his other knee, it hit his shoulder, it hit his face mask, it hit every part of his body.
I was there.
You were there.
I was there. I was there.
You were there. So I felt sick. It's the only time that I ever met. And when they were down at the 1 yard line, I was on the floor and I was praying. I remember that's another thing. I remember where I was. I don't remember getting off the chair, but I remember my wife said, you weren't even on the chair. You were on the ground on your knees in front of the TV because the Jermaine Kearse thing just gutted me. I was like, this is David Tyree all over again. I can't believe this. Jermaine Kearse is a freaking guy. This is ridiculous. Remember, this predated the Edelman catch against the Falcons.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So we finally got a revenge for that catch with the Edelman catch, in terms of the football gods. But at that point, all I'd ever seen was the craziest catches ever against the Patriots.
Yeah. Helmet catch. Yeah.
And it was the craziest thing. So I'm like, the one thing you can't forget of all these plays, the best play that ever took down the Patriots was the Eli Manning throw to Manningham down the sideline.
Yeah.
That throw is one of the greatest throws in NFL history.
Yeah.
That one you can't say anything about. That was just perfect. I mean, everyone that's the hardest throw in football.
Yeah.
Right? To the outside perimeter. But even a deep out is easier because the receiver has stopped and now he's moving sideways. So to drop it in the bucket on the sideline that far downfield is it's impossible. The way it was incredible. So that one you just have to tip your cap. I'd be fine if that had been the only loss with that throw. Cool, right? The David Tyree thing was a little bit ridiculous, and then this Kearse thing was just absurd. And then so I just remember looking up. I don't think I didn't understand what happened. Like I only caught I think I was looking down praying, and I didn't really understand what was going on. And I looked up, and then we had the ball. And I was like, what? That was the worst. It was a win. I felt the worst I've ever felt as a sports fan in a win. It was ultimately a win because I thought for sure it was 100% we were losing.
Yeah.
You're a Seahawks fan. I am sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that moment.
I didn't plan it. That was genuine. That's genuine. I thought about the worst I've felt, and that was the worst, even though we ended up winning.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the corner of that end zone, right? And I remember it happening, and then it's just pure chaos. And then you got to look up at the big screen. I got my buddy with me, and we're like, "Wait, what?" And then. Yeah, and so my worst loss was that next moment with the Malcolm Butler. Your biggest moment, your worst moment was was a great moment for me, and then you just flipped it on me. So,
well, I can also there's another thing with the Seahawks. I was actually at the Seahawks' worst loss. Do you know the Seahawks' worst loss ever?
Like scoring wise?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're gonna refresh.
This is it. This is it. The worst loss is they were up by over 20 in the fourth quarter against the Ravens. It was a road game against the Ravens. It was one of the top 5 greatest comebacks in NFL history. It was Hasselbeck. It was Corin Robinson up 20. And the quarterback, Anthony Wright was the quarterback for the Ravens. And my mom, I lived in DC. My mom, I got tickets to this Ravens game. We had great seats. And people were leaving. Everyone was leaving. And I was there with my mom. Like, we're not leaving. Like, I don't go to that many games. And this was kind of a cool thing. And I was like, Mom, I think we should stay. She's like, yeah, we should stay. Why not? And then sure enough, just bombs away. And I don't even remember the wide receiver. There was some wide receiver that the Ravens had that was just deep shot. Anthony Wright had an arm. Anthony, say what you want about Anthony Wright. The dude had a cannon, and he was just long. And then they were converting. It was incredible. And then it just boom, 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 boom down the field. So that was a cool thing, and it just happened to be against the Seahawks.
Well, Seahawks, yeah, they definitely have a lot of fun games over the years.
It was it was an incredibly entertaining game.
I love it. So with sports, with fantasy, like when did you discover fantasy sports?
My buddy in college, this was early days. It was like 2000, and ESPN had a website fantasy game at that point. But he was going to Germany to study abroad, and he wasn't sure what kind of internet access he was going to have. And he wanted to play it safe. I was like, dude, you're going to be able to, update your fantasy team in Germany. But he's like, I'm in a different time zone and lineup lock and all this stuff. And he's like, and I'm not sure how busy I'm going to be and what kind of activities and all these things. And I was like, that's a good point. That's a good point. You want to cover your base. He's like, I got to teach you how to run my fantasy baseball team. So he taught me how to run his fantasy baseball team. And then halfway through the season, I had picked up this guy they just called up, Rafael Furcal, and he stole 60 bases in the second half. And in a 5x5 fantasy baseball league, that's big, right? So, if you can wrap up steals, you're halfway in. And then I think I got a closer. I think I picked up like John Burkett, who had like a 2-point something ERA for the Braves that season randomly. Was in the Cy Young chase. He's like, why'd you pick up Burkett? I was like, I don't even know. I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, Burkett's incredible. He's like our ace now. I was like, I don't know, picked him on waivers. And he's like, and this Furcal. Yeah, I was like, I don't know. We needed a shortstop. I don't know. I just thought he'd be fine. And then we won the championship. And and then they sent you a t-shirt. And then he gave me the t-shirt. It's a good friend. And so then I was hooked, and I was like, well, I'm in the league next year. I'm out, people, I was just doing it under your name. I'm going to win it on my own. And then in 2003, I won it again, my own. And then I won again in 2004. So then I had a real prime of my fantasy baseball career there in a few home leagues, which was fun. But then once fantasy football rolled around, right about that same time, I did a fantasy football league. It was total points. And I remember my first pick was Marvin Harrison. My second round pick was Tony Gonzalez. And I was the last draft a quarterback.
Nice.
So that was my first, that I knew from my baseball experience was that you needed to figure out the VORP, the value over replacement. And I was like, yeah, I don't think quarterback makes sense. That was back when there would be 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the first round.
Yeah.
That was bad. That was way back in the early 2000s. And I remember waiting on quarterback, getting my tight end, getting the VORP, the value over replacement on Tony Gonzalez was incredible. Right. And that was the last draft a running back, last draft a quarterback, won the league. And I was like, oh man, okay, this is fun too. Right. So then I had a couple of years there where I was hardcore into both. And then I don't know what happened, man. I think that the people that were in my leagues in fantasy baseball were so good at grinding. They were so good at finding the 2-start pitchers, so good at matchups, the lefty righty matchups. And eventually I just couldn't compete. So I think I just got marginalized in baseball. I was like, I can't do this. Night in, night out, you guys are just grinding me into dust. I was like, I'm going to take my fantasy and go home. I'm not playing with you guys anymore. You guys are beating me up. This fantasy football, though, once a week I can handle.
Nice. Yeah, fantasy baseball, I mean, it takes a different breed, a different level of dedication.
If you can do it, it's great.
What so in those early years when you discovered fantasy sports and fantasy football specifically, what is it about the game, playing the game, that you loved so much, that you fell in love with?
It just goes back to the football card game, right? It's just a little bit of a puzzle. It's like, why do we like video games? It's very similar. It's just these guys are going to play it out, and you have to try to figure out what's predictive of performance. And it's hard to explain why we enjoy games the way we do. Right? It's hard to explain, like, why the prestige you get from being on top of a fantasy football league is worth a lot more than money. Most people, I think, they would rather win than get the prize money.
Yeah.
We talk about this in Dynasty all the time, right? Like, people would rather have a team filled with young, exciting players than actually win. It's crazy. It's just an interesting study. And, this is primarily it's a male dominated industry, male dominated hobby. And there's just something about the gamification of statistics that so many of us just gravitate to. And it's not a lot of other hobbies that I have. You know, I know a lot of people have PlayStations, and people love to go fishing and all these things. And there was just something about seeing these guys, you know, trying to find, because I would go to the waiver wire and I knew there was a guy on the waiver wire that would make the difference, right? Like that Rafael Furcal,
Yeah.
right? Or whoever it is every year, right? That guy would make, and he's out there. You don't know who it's going to be, but he's on this list somewhere.
Jamal Charles.
He's on the list somewhere, dude. You got to just find him. You got to look for the right data point and you'll be able to find him. He's free. He is the late round sleepers. It's just captivating. There's something about, there's a pool of 100 guys, and then one of the guys on here is going to be like the league winner in the playoffs. He's going to be the guy. And so that challenge was just I don't know. I can't explain why. What's the best answer? This is a very difficult question, and I don't have a straightforward answer as to the why. What's the best answer you've heard for anyone that you've had on the show, explaining how fantasy hooked them?
Yeah, I think there's two things, right? It's that competitive nature, amplifying the game of football that you love, making every game matter, and obviously just wanting to beat your friends, right, or beat people that your rivals, and then other people. It's just it's the experience, it's the league, it's the bonding, it's the live drafts, it's the connections, it's the stuff that goes beyond the game. So it's the two things. Like, you're addicted to winning, you want to battle and you want to compete, or you just love the experience. And I think most people kind of blends the two. But originally, I think a lot of people, it's they first experienced the league experience, and they got hooked, and now it's about the challenges of constructing lineups and all that kind of stuff.
There are just so few real competitions you could have against your peers.
Yeah.
In this world, like, where it's an even playing field. And I think so many of us have that competitive streak way down, that this was an opportunity. Like, oh wow, okay, I'm not playing high school sports anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not playing as much intramural sports as I used to. All right. I'm 22, 23. Now suddenly this is a competitive outlet.
For sure.
And now we're using our brains a little bit more than our athleticism,
which we need to.
but I think it's fantasy sports is an incredible way for analytical minded people to compete, especially after they have exhausted some of the leagues of their youth. I think It's perfect. I think that was a big draw. But there is just something else even deeper about predicting the outcome of these guys and what they're doing on the field that it is hard to fully explain in words.
Sure. Now, do you play in many leagues these days?
Well, I have a whole bunch of patron leagues where, on my show, patreon.com/podfather is how people support the show. And then we have patron only leagues, and we just keep starting them and keep starting more and more dynasty leagues. So now I'm in, like, whatever it is, 14 patron dynasty leagues.
Nice.
But beyond that, I really can't do much anymore. If if we become a fantasy operator, there are rules, thanks to various scandals that happened 10 years ago, that prevent anyone that's at a certain level, if they're at an operator, from playing fantasy for money at all. So
yeah, no, That makes sense. Makes sense.
I can do some little baby leagues and some fun leagues and some listener leagues and things like that, but that's about it.
So with content creation, like, so you basically, you said it was 2014 or so. That's when you decided to kind of dive in, or 2012? Where was that?
Yeah, I made the decision like in 2012 and didn't really launch Player Profiler until 2014, and started playing around with podcasting in 2013. There's something called Blog Talk Radio.
Yeah.
You would take a handheld, cordless phone or a landline telephone, and you would do your show into the phone, and then it would record somewhere and allow you to publish the podcast on a website. That was the original. I think that was even before like the iTunes app, right? The
Yeah.
pod, the podcast app on the phone predates even like the iTunes podcast and all that. So then all this stuff came out very quickly soon after I started. And so, okay. And then YouTube and all these things. If I had to go back and do something differently, I would have been earlier on YouTube. I would have been more aggressive on YouTube early.
Yeah.
I was very much an audiophile, and I still am. So it's one of my weaknesses is I kind of love just audio, and I love just putting the headphones on. And so I really was meticulous about my sound quality and about producing the show for audio. And I thought that streaming it diminished it. And
Sure.
now seeing that YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world after Google, and how much it's growing, where the revenue YouTube generates dwarfs even Netflix. So, I would have tried to be bigger earlier on YouTube if I knew, like, with hindsight.
Yeah. What's the origin of Roto Underworld? What's the origin, or what inspired the Podfather name and the Fantasy Mansion name?
I don't know. The Fantasy Mansion Twitter handle at @fantasy_mansion on Twitter. I have no idea. It was fantasy. Everyone was fantasy something,
Okay.
and I don't know why. I just picked some word at random that's all it was. There was no good backstory to that at all.
I love it.
Roto Underworld was really a play on the big site that was the most popular for fantasy football information back then was Roto World.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so I was like, well, this is like the advanced stats. We're going to be the advanced stats version of Roto World. We're going to be Roto Underworld.
Okay.
So that's where that came from. And the Podfather was some listener
Okay.
threw that name at me. And I don't know. I called it out on a show. I probably got an email, called it out on a show, and then just kept referring to myself as that in the third person, and then got it trademarked. Here's the trademark right here.
Nice.
We got it. We got it. So there may have been others earlier that called themselves the Podfather or were referred to as the Podfather, but
Not trademarked.
They didn't trademark it. See, that's the mistake they made. So the government thinks I'm number one, thinks I was the first to market with the Podfather name because no one else put themselves forward. So you got to eat it.
I love it. I love it. So when did you really realize that you were onto something? Yeah, with all this, this venture. When did you find your voice, like personally, and then when did you just like really feel like the brand was heading in the right direction?
Yeah, so like the first 10 episodes of the show were just me basically explaining certain metrics and why they were on the site and where they came from and how I thought they were predictive and what the context would be to use them. Right, there'd be certain stats that I thought were more relevant for, and still are, like for tight ends, for example, right? Or, if we have something called target premium, which is the fantasy points per target above and beyond the other players in your team, right? And then if there was a quarterback change, like that stat would mean more, for example. So like if there was a quarterback upgrade, then that would be a good sign for that particular player. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So hey, here are the situations where this stat's the most relevant, the most useful. And it was a pretty dry show. because I was like, well, I got to explain to people all these stats, you know? So it was almost like a TED Talk type of thing. And then there was this, my daughter had like a little car she would ride that squeaked. And then, so I went and I had, it was a cordless phone that I was talking into, Blog Talk Radio. And so I went and I sat on this car and it squeaked. And I don't know, I just started riffing off of sitting on a car that was squeaking, maybe talking about a player, being a clown car player or something. And then I started bouncing up and down on it. And then the car broke, the wheel broke, and I fell, and, you know, and it became like a funny bit on the show. And it's something sort of, I got some emails from people after saying they enjoyed it. And that really emboldened me to kind of just let go and riff a lot more and not have like a super structured show. And that was a sort of breakout moment for me where I was like, okay, I can just be myself. People like it. And it doesn't have to all be about football. It can be fun and silly. So that was big. And it's basically the emails, though, were the thing. It's the emails you get from listeners. And I still get so many emails. And some of these are paragraphs where people will share with you why the show means a lot, why they get so much value, why they care about it, even though it's this, you know, this silly game, right? It's a game that's layered on top of yet another game. That's what fantasy football is. And then we're talking about it. So we're analyzing a game that's built on yet another game. So in the grand scheme of the world, it's probably one of the least important industries, sectors in the world. You know, so the idea that this would be taken seriously, right? And there are still to this day are fantasy analysts that take themselves very seriously, and their picks very seriously, and their track record and their receipts very seriously. And I've just never been that guy. I'm like, player profiler is pretty serious. Like you're gonna get some serious stats. I think all the seriousness I need is in player profiler, and then I can be as goofy as I want to be now. I have plenty of street cred. I don't have any insecurities about my place in serious thought and ability helping the community get better, smarter. I think I'm doing my part on that. So now that kind of gives me license to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, jump on a clown car during a show. Who cares?
Yeah.
And so it all kind of clicked together. But it's the constant feed. I'm sure you get this, the emails where people are sharing, because again, you're doing this silly thing and there is an existential element to it where it's like, what I'm doing is not that serious. And I know a lot of people are doing things that are doing a lot more good for the world than I think I am, because you don't know how it's affecting people. And then real people with real problems will email you in ideas and thoughts of appreciation. And that was so powerful. It was the thing. I would write them and I'd be like, this is what drives me. Like, thank you for sending this to me. I would read them all. And that is the thing. That is the thing. That's the reason I'm here talking to you right now, were those emails I got.
That's fantastic. No, I mean, I totally agree. I love that you kind of recognize that, like, player profiler and everything you do is so like objective and heavy when it comes to like this is my thing, but then you balance it out with that personality. Do you feel like some people misunderstand you, don't get it? Because to me, whenever I've listened to you, periodically for years, and I love it. Like, I think that, like, it's so funny how much joy you bring to it, and how tongue in cheek, just fun stuff that some people like misunderstand, like where you come from, don't they?
I guess. Yeah, a little bit less. I'm not on Twitter as much, so I
Okay.
don't get quite the blowback that I used to get. It was those a few years there where I would have to. I was tilting a little bit when I referred to myself as the content colossus on Twitter, and that got quote tweeted over 100 times. For people just that didn't know me were just relentless.
Sure.
And then I decided, I don't know, it was like an hour or two in, I was talking to Nate on the phone, Nate Liss. Nate, if you're out there, buddy, call me, right? Nate Liss and I are estranged. But it's funny. There are so many people that have been part of Player Profiler, and for whatever reason, they have to go walkabout, they leave. And I'm very, very proud. Like right now, we have Josh Larkey, who he took a big job over at the 33rd team. Now he's back doing a show called The Dominator on the Player Profiler podcast network.
Yeah.
Cody Carpentier, same thing. He's doing a show with us now. So I that's one of the things I take the most pride in, is that, except with this whole Nate thing, right, where I admit on the last episode, I was a little bit resentful that he was leaving. I thought it was a bad idea. I didn't want to break the show up, right? So I was pretty aggressive trying to convince him not to do it. And I think he thought I was too heavy-handed. But hopefully he'll forgive me at some point and call me back, right? All you could do, I emailed him today, I think. Yeah, I just keep, for anyone that's out there, if you care about someone and they've been rubbed the wrong way and they're not here for you right now, right? They're they've decided that they don't need you in their life at this moment. Just keep going. Just keep tapping them on the shoulder every few months. Keep tapping. Just don't stop. Don't stop, especially if it's a family member. I mean, this is just, Nate and I have actually only met in person a few times, right? And when I did, he's like so much bigger in real life than he looks on camera. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. You're so big. And so we're pretty much like fantasy friends, right? But it's a fantasy friendship that means a lot. And I'm going to keep at it, right? I'm going to keep trying to win him back over. But yeah, if it's a family member type of thing, like my dad with like his brother, and I'm trying to tell him, I'm like, don't stop reaching out. Keep reaching out. Keep letting him know that your door is open, that you want to have a connection. And whenever that person's ready, hopefully they'll be like, oh, I'll call. Okay, I'll call you back. Okay, I'll text you back. All right, I guess I'm over it now. So I just got to keep. It's worth it. It's worth it. You just keep grinding at it and try to restore that relationship. But a lot of these guys, like with a Josh Larkey, we left on great terms, and he now we're back. And so I take a lot, like I said, I take huge pride in the fact that everyone that's actually gotten to know me or has collaborated with me in any way over the years is an advocate, right? And then people will say, hey man, I heard, someone said something negative about you, and I stopped them in their tracks and I told them they were dead wrong and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Right. And I was like, well, thank you for saying that. So yes, there's still a misunderstanding. And there's, certainly there's people that I, called them out for some bad take or some draft that they did, and I made fun of some pick they made. But that was very much the podcaster, just getting a reaction, not my actual, that wasn't like a true human judgment that I was laying down at that moment.
But you have a playful nature. It's obvious, and this is fantasy we're talking about, right?
I mean, that's
talking
the thing, right?
It's like the home of trash talk and good times and getting under people's skin and just making fun. And to me, that's what I see you do, and I think it's great.
That's what I thought, Kev. That's what I thought. Imagine my surprise. The first time I stepped in it with somebody, right? Whoever it was, Mike Clay, somebody, right? Imagine the first time I stepped in it, right? Making fun of someone's rankings or whatever it was, right? And I'm sitting here going, wait, what? Isn't this fantasy? This doesn't mean anything. No one really gives a shit about anyone's rankings, really. Isn't this a fake sport on top of another fake sport? And isn't like the whole industry predicated on isn't like a smack talk button on Sleeper?
Yeah,
Like, what are we do? Wait. So smack talk's not cool? I can't. It's what? So yeah, I was really shook at first when I started getting criticized by some of the powers that be in the industry. I was a little bit like, whoa, wait, that's not cool. I thought because of the whole fantasy, but no, and the one thing I did was I did go out of my way pretty quickly to try to make sure people know that, hey, this is a playful bit.
Yeah.
Right. I became a caricature with my wink and my nod and my like little side eye smirk, making sure, hey, everybody, this is not like me laying down a real human judgment. This is me being playful.
Yeah.
And, no fucking way I'm drafting Kyle Pitts that high. You guys are insane. He took, if someone's ranking Kyle Pitts number 1 in that draft class, what was that, the 2021 draft class?
Yeah.
Someone's putting Kyle Pitts number 1 in Superflex. I have to say something. You have to understand, like, that's how I'm wired. I have to say it. And if I'm going to say it, I'm going to say who it was. I'm like, hey, this was the person. I disagree. And it's more entertaining. You have to admit it's more entertaining if I lay it down with a big flourish than I just like clinically say this is a ranking that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
Right. And but it's that extra little. I just think it was that extra little condescension or that extra little, knife under the ribs that it went beyond. Okay, you're criticizing my rankings, but just you're taking it just a little. You're taking it a step too far, Podfather, and I don't appreciate it. I think that's fun. What happened.
It's entertaining. It's authentic, but it's amplified. I mean, you got a show. You're putting on some performance, but you're having fun, right? You're having fun, and you bring great quality when it comes to the information. Obviously,
I mean, the whole time. Platforms. Say what you want. The whole time, it's never been mean spirited, and I'm having a great time while I'm doing it. If I'm tearing you down, if I'm ripping apart your rankings on a podcast, I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I'm not doing this with just a pencil, right? Or just like, this is wrong, but this is correct. No, we're having a lot of fun while we're doing it.
Fun. That's the name of the game. I love it. Now, when it comes to everything that you're doing, the different podcasts, the apps, like everything you have created, what are the pieces of content from a consumer perspective that you are most proud of?
Oh, I don't want to say Fast Draft because it doesn't even exist yet. But I've been living this new app for so many months, testing it, hours long tests on the weekends. It's already the thing I'm most proud of.
Nice.
And it's, the same guy that helped me with player profilers, helped me with Fast Draft. And that's something that he and I talked about very recently. But in terms of the site, I really think it's the dynasty rankings. The dynasty rankings I feel really proud of because, we've rolled out strategy mode where you can put win now, you can say rebuild, and it changes our whole lifetime value structure, creating a lifetime value engine for these players. Really was a game changer where the trade analyzer, it used to be that trade analyzers could be gamed with volume. We've solved that dilemma with the trade analyzer with the way we structure the lifetime values. We were the first site where you would go and look at Superflex rankings and it would be just 8 quarterbacks before you'd even get to a running back or a receiver. That wasn't the way it used to be. Right. And so there was a lot of elements of the way we do dynasty valuation, and then the tools that were layered on top of that were groundbreaking, to the point where now people are, they're on Reddit and they're going, well, here's an alternative to the player profiler rankings, or here, like, we're sort of a reference point. The player profiler dynasty rankings are this reference point for all of dynasty. And I'm really proud of that. Yeah. So that was because I think dynasty is the best. Like, it's one thing to win a league that's 1 year, and then it's just a shame that you draft these guys, you follow them, and then in a day after week 17 is over, that team is deleted.
Yeah.
Right. It feels weird.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in dynasty, that team is perpetual. You have these guys, for their whole career. And, some big trade I did, where it's like a 3-year rebuild where I had nobody, but I packaged Tua and a couple other guys in Superflex and got Justin Herbert. And, I had this bare bones team with a couple superstars. And then finally, now I'm competing with it. I mean, that is so satisfying.
I love it. I love it. Well, again, player profiler, such an incredible tool, platform in this industry. If you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. Because, regardless of anything, it's the most beautiful website in fantasy. Would you agree?
Well, yes.
Pretty nice.
That's the thing. I mean, I did have a background. People ask, like, oh yeah, I did have a background in web design. That's true. I care about how things look, how things feel. Absolutely. I'm also proud that we pack in all that information and it's still pretty snappy. Speed and performance is also good, pretty reliable. Yeah, there's going to be a day or two when the site kind of struggles because of the volume and all the hits. Week 1, noon before Sunday's game, sometimes the thing drags. That's what happens when you have, tens of thousands of people using a particular service. But we do a good job. So I'm really, the crazy thing is, the guy, Michael, that helps us with our servers, he was just a listener of the show and happened to be an expert with Amazon AWS.
Nice.
And we have, designers like Brittany, and we have so many people that, our head of content now, Theo, he was originally like a fan of the Breakout Finder show and then decided to write an article for the Breakout Finder website, which no longer even exists. And that was originally with Nate, call me back, Nate. So it's just so many people that are part of everything we do. It started with the podcast. And if anytime I need something, like if we need some resource, someone to help us with motion graphics or someone to help us with this or that, I will just put an SOS out on the podcast and I'll immediately get, 5-10 people emailing.
It's awesome.
And saying, hey, you should definitely take advantage of that. I mean, your show is at a point where, if you want to grow some element of your enterprise or you need help in some way, your first instinct shouldn't be to put a posting online. It should be to just mention it on the podcast and see what happens.
It's great advice. I love it. It's great advice.
But and these people have been with us for a long time, for years. It's unbelievable, some of the opportunities that have come my way, just because people enjoyed the show and happen to have a skill set that they thought could help.
That's awesome. Well, incredible product for sure. Definitely check it out. Let's dive into just a few rapid fire questions. We'll fly through these. I'll throw out a question. Just give me an answer. Quick thing that comes to mind. What do you love most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
I enjoy being able to manifest things that people need, right? And so, we got to a place where we could have this one-stop shop where, okay, dynasty rankings, best ball rankings. We rolled out offensive line rankings and cornerback rankings, and we're going to do a Devi ranking soon. That's coming soon on Player Profiler. And, providing people, we had like a fantasy intelligence network where we provide people with like advice all season and help them with their draft and on all these things and all the different ways we can give people advice in all different types of formats. And then, there isn't a way to, it's frustrating that if your team is in rebuild mode, the rankings around the industry don't really align with what you need. Okay, well, we'll do a strategy mode and we'll make it so you can set the rankings to rebuild. And now all of a sudden, now Marvin Harrison's even higher. Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
Now, so taking it a step further, what's next? The only thing left would be to actually become a fantasy operator and be able to have some say in the games people play, in the types of formats that are available. Right. So, for example, like I'm not happy right now with my inability to do rookie drafts. I want a rookie draft all the time, all day, every day. I want to be doing rookie drafts.
Yeah.
But I'm in only so many dynasty leagues, and those rookie drafts happen in May. So one of my goals of building an app was to allow people to be a lot easier to do rookie mocks, real money rookie tournaments, all because I know, again, not only do I know that's what I want to do, like I want to be drafting Brock Bowers right now. These are the guys I'm focused on. And I know Dynasty's growing. And I know that means more and more people are fixated on rookies.
Yeah.
So it's both catering to my own sensibility, but also knowing that looking around the industry going, man, there's a new Dynasty podcast coming up every week. Right. There's so many more Dynasty resources now than there were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And yet what has lagged are the places people can actually play Dynasty or play, do something with rookies. And so that gives me a lot of the having the resources to be able to actually create new things, new games, new services that people need and want. That is incredibly fulfilling.
That's awesome. Yeah, proactively thinking ahead, where are things going and creating something for that. I love it.
Why doesn't this exist?
That's great.
Right? Why doesn't this exist? Like technically the game we're rolling out is a best ball format. And it's been the number one open question I've had the last 4 years. Right? Since Underdog rolled out, every day that goes by, I'm expecting a best ball app to come out because everyone's seen how great Underdog is. And I just expected there to be 15 best ball apps out there by this time. And let's see, we have Underdog, we have FFPC. They have a big, best ball contingent. There's an app called Drafters, I believe, and I know DraftKings, and I believe even FanDuel now. I don't know. I've heard. I haven't played the FanDuel one before, but I've heard they have a best ball app. And there might be others, but I'm not aware of them. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's not enough. And think about how many different best ball formats you could come up with. You yourself could probably come up with 5 different unique formats for best ball if you had an app platform. And so there's just a lot of room to innovate there. I think there's been a real lull because, number one, a live draft room is really hard to code. Building a live draft room, say what you want about Yahoo, ESPN, the big names in fantasy platforms. What they did, CBS, developing a live draft room where everyone, 10, 12 people are all synced up, seeing the same experience.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's incredibly tough. It's much easier to just say, hey, pick one of two players or something like that. Actually having a live draft room is a major technical challenge. And then in the last 4 years, there's been such a push to legalize sports betting around the country. And there's been a real dragon that people chased. And then a lot of these services have since closed. Like they were open for a month, they were open for a year, they were open for 2 years, and then all of a sudden they're gone. So there was a real, I think, a real push to say, hey, if we're either going to do a gambling app or we're going to do something that's kind of like sports betting, but it's also fantasy, right? We're going to see how close we can get a fantasy app to sports betting and really walk that line. So I think in the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of those apps come out, and they've crowded out traditional fantasy apps. And so there's been a real sort of lag and a lull, innovation lull in the space in what you would consider more traditional fantasy, where it's a live draft experience. So
exciting stuff. Yeah, exciting stuff.
Well,
ahead,
it's just
for sure.
it's been. I just feel like there's been a real need that someone needs to do it.
Might as well be the Podfather.
Might as well.
Can you name one person that you love to watch a football game with, just to hear their perspective on the game?
This is not, I swear, anyone that listens to the show knows this is not a cop-out answer, right? This is not me taking my mom to the Oscars. This is real. My daughter is amazing because she says stuff and I just can't believe what she's saying. Like, it's just, I know some of it's like my own ego because she's probably like internalized some of it from listening to me.
Yeah.
And then I'm hearing something that was maybe a little bit of an echo of something, and I'm like, oh my God, look at her. This girl really knows what she's talking about. Oh, wait. No, but it really is. It really is. But she loves the Red Zone channel. She gets locked in. She knows the guys' names. She knows who's good too. She knows who's good, and she knows when she identifies fake performances. Remember Bailey Zappi?
Mm-hmm.
Remember Bailey Zappi?
Yep,
there was a moment. Bailey Zappi had a moment. And I remember her calling it out before even I was thinking, man, this guy was so prolific at like Western Kentucky. Maybe we all missed it. Maybe he is Dak Prescott or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, this is fake. Just he's no better than Mac Jones. Just give it back to Mac Jones. Now, turns out Mac Jones isn't any good either, but at least she didn't fall for the Bailey Zappi banana in the tailpipe. There were a bunch of Patriots fans that fell for a couple of weeks there. They were falling for the Bailey Zappi banana in the tailpipe.
Oh, for sure. You're right.
And then so she was not. She was no. She was like this. She's like, that was a lucky throw. Like that. He's not that good. And I was like, sure. It doesn't even matter though. What I love is the confident takes.
Yeah.
I love that's the best, is like, he's not that good. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, whatever, you keep talking, that's if I'm listening, if I'm watching a show or I'm watching sports with someone, I want someone that's going to be giving confident takes, and the other thing is and here's another thing I think reason I like it is because she doesn't ask for my opinion on anything. She doesn't give a shit what I think, right? Because it's my daughter.
Yeah.
I go and I watch, a game anywhere else. Everyone's always asking me a million questions, and I'm like, I don't know, or it put me on the spot all the time because they're like, you do this for a living.
Yeah.
You're a football guy. Why don't you tell me this? Or tell me why that? And it's like, I appreciate it. It's cool. It feels good for people to like come to you as a wise man or whatever. Right. But it's also nice to have someone who just doesn't give a shit, doesn't need to hear, doesn't care. Like, that's actually what I prefer. I want to hear your takes.
Yeah.
Right. I give takes all the time. I want to go. That's why I love hanging out with people from the industry. That's why I love going to FSGA. That's why I love going to the FF Expo, because you can talk about football and you're going to get as many takes back as you will give. And that is awesome. That's what I want.
And she delivers. That's all I can relate. I mean, my daughter's 11, and watching the game with her is fantastic. I love talking sports with her and bringing her into my world on that front. So that was a
And when she rolls her
answer.
eyes, when she just dismisses a play, that was bull.
I love it.
That was lucky. And I'm like, that was crazy. That wasn't that. You're right. That wasn't that impressive. That was luck.
So good.
I mean, she's not quite at the point where she's like, quoting Dominator ratings and, and talking about the unsustainable yards per route run of, Brian Robinson. She's not quite there yet, but we're making progress. We're making progress.
Trajectory is looking good right now. I love it. What's your favorite place you've been on vacation?
Oh, wow. Oh, I've been to a lot of good places, man. Been to a lot of good places. Wow. That's a tough one. I'm pretty sure I'm about to go on my favorite one, which is Japan.
Oh, nice.
I'm about to go to Japan, so I'm preparing for that. I was just telling my wife that it's actually hell, because I know there's so much to do, and it's just so painful to leave, knowing that I'm going to be constantly thinking about Player Profiler when I'm gone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe I should stay home, and she's like, oh yeah, because you're going to get to go to Japan all the time. And, we have friends over there, and yeah, you're going to have the person that we know over there actually, is in the tourism industry, and you'll definitely get the same kind of experience if you go a year from now, if you ever go at all. Sure, buddy. And I'm like, yeah, good point. I guess we're going to Japan.
Bring in the perspective. I love it.
Yeah, it was so I think I had an incredible time when I did a little backpacking in Europe when I was, which is very bougie thing to do. But yeah, bouge factor aside, I really love Florence. It's where my family is from. My Italian side of my family is from that area. But I did a wine tour, a bike tour, and in all the different museums and stuff, and the cool things you can do. Where I saw like Michelangelo's workshop that was like, in the basement of the Medici Chapel, where you have to have a special code to get in there. Certain guard, you say a certain code word to, and they'll take you down. I don't know. I just really, of all it was like a 3 or 4 day stay that I had in Florence that, I think was the best. So that whole area of Italy, that's when we were like planning any kind of European trip, I'm always like, can we go to Italy, please? There's places like, there's one of the top restaurants in the world in Modena. It's where they do these like deconstructed dishes that are, just complete next level. But like, yeah, you could, there's places in Copenhagen that do this with the gastronomy. But to do gastronomy, but Italian, I mean, that's just
hard
bellissimo.
to beat. I love it.
Yeah.
What's your all-time favorite TV show?
Well, here's the thing. I finish very few TV shows. I'm always the first one to say, like, even like after like a season 2, I'm like, jump the shark. Jump the shark, jump the shark, jump the shark. I don't know. I think I know my favorite season of a TV show.
Okay.
That I know, because there's, I loved Mad Men. I loved, entire series. Breaking Bad, I loved how Breaking Bad ended. So I did make it all the way through Breaking Bad. I thought Breaking Bad was incredible. In terms of an individual season, I believe the show was Dexter. You familiar with Dexter?
Yeah.
And I believe it was season 4 was the Trinity Killer season. And where that his name, what was the name, was John, what was the I'm blanking on the dude's, the bad guy's name.
Yeah.
John Lithgow. The whatever season, I think it was season 4, but I'm not positive. The season of Dexter with John Lithgow as the Trinity Killer was the best season of television I've ever seen.
I've
I
heard
mean,
that said by a lot of people. Yeah.
are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, people say that. Yeah. People
Wait,
think
people, are you
that
serious?
there's a
I've never
season of
heard people
Dexter.
say that season was the
Yeah.
best season of television,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was. It was. I was like, I remember being like freaked out. I remember being like jumpy.
Yeah.
John Lithgow as a bad guy is incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
That comes a long ways from like Harry and the Hendersons, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, he's so good. He's so good. And then individual episode, there's an episode of Mad Men called The Carousel, where because I'm a sentimental guy, I really am. Where he's pitching the Kodak projector, where
Okay.
you put in the slides.
Yeah.
You know, that's how they. And so I'm just old enough to remember when I was a little kid, my dad did bust out the slide projector to show pictures of when he was a kid and stuff.
Nice.
And so I remember that. I remember vaguely them breaking that out when I was a little kid. And then, he talks about nostalgia and how, there's a few things in marketing that are super potent. One of them, of course, is the new thing, the new fresh thing that you just want, that people want, whatever is the newest, most innovative tech toy.
Yeah.
And certainly new and fresh and cool is, a tale as old as time in marketing.
Sure.
But there is another way that you can, and you've seen this even with the Super Bowl commercials. You see this more and more now, where they're leveraging nostalgia and they're leveraging emotion instead of just hitting you with cool features and fresh and new. I think you could trace it all the way back to that episode. If you go back and watch you're not going to, but the next
I will. I'll
Super
track it
Bowl.
down. Yeah.
No, I'm saying, if you're not going to go back and watch all those commercials from the Super Bowl.
Oh, sure.
But if you watch the next Super Bowl, track how many commercials are leveraging sentimentality, nostalgia, right? And pulling at that end of the emotional spectrum to try to sell a product.
Yeah.
It all started with that episode of Mad Men, where he literally had people in a sales pitch, serious people at companies at a sales pitch, crying. And like, it's still like a scene from any show, the one that like gives me, like, I still believe, like, if I'd love to talk to John Hamm about that and be like, so how often do you think about that scene that you did? Because that really, it's like so on another level. And he's a good actor, of course. He's been in a lot of cool stuff. But to me, that's another level of that particular scene of that particular episode. Incredible.
I love it. Yeah, nostalgia. I mean, that always hits home for sure. Do you have an all-time favorite movie?
Man, tough. I can tell you that I'm going back and rewatching the entire Quentin Tarantino library right now.
Nice.
Because I just saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on the plane. I don't know why I'd never watched it. And then it sort of reminded me of how good and then I started watching interviews of Quentin Tarantino on YouTube. And the best story is like with him and John Travolta, where he had this movie and the studio was constantly just hammering him to change from John Travolta to anyone else. And he said, well, I can't, because I wrote it with him in mind. He's an
Wow.
incredible movie star.
Yeah.
I don't think you remember how good of a movie star John Travolta was.
Yeah.
Right. But all the execs knew John Travolta of the recency bias. We talk about recency bias with fantasy football.
Sure.
Their recency bias was Look Who's Talking 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And they're like, John Travolta's a joke. And he's like, he's very much not a joke. He won an Oscar and he's an incredible movie star. He could carry this movie unlike anyone else. And then the biggest movie star in the world approached him at a party, Bruce Willis, and said, "Hey, Quentin, I would love to play the Vincent Vega character."
Wow.
And then you have to understand, like, he wants a hit. Like Reservoir Dogs was successful, but it's a cult classic, right? And I think True Romance did well. He wrote that, but he didn't direct it. And he really wanted that breakout, right? It was like kind of like Billy Corgan with like Siamese Dream, right? He knew it was the same time period, right? He knew, he was like, I'm in the center of the zeitgeist. I've got the producer from Nevermind, right? Butch Vig. Like I'm teed up like no one's ever been teed up for a hit record more than I am right now with Smashing Pumpkins. I've got to make this happen. And then Quentin's like, I'm teed up right now. I'm in the center of the zeitgeist. I'm coming off Reservoir Dogs, coming off True Romance. The studio, they don't fully trust me yet because I don't quite have a smash hit, but I'm the guy everyone's talking about in Hollywood. So this is it, right? Just like, everyone's talking about, okay, we can't wait for the Smashing Pumpkins to come out with a record. Can't wait for the next Quentin Tarantino movie. And so there was a lot of pressure. And the easiest thing for him to do would be to listen to all the wise men, all the people that had done a million hits that said, just fucking put Bruce in there and he'll headline it and it'll be a smash. And he's like, but I have 3 leads and this is another lead. Like, I would love for him to play Butch.
Yeah.
He's better as Butch. He's just a better Butch. And John Travolta's a better Vincent Vega. I've seen it in my head. I've seen the movie play out. It's better. If you put Bruce Willis in that role as Vincent Vega, it's worse. The movie would be measurably worse. Everything's going to be worse. I've seen the movie. I know it. And yet he'd only had one movie and it wasn't the big smash hit. And yet he had the confidence. He had the confidence to stand up. Because I've had this happen to me where, people will say, well, that's not going to work. Or you need to make this more SEO friendly, right? Like with Player Profiler, for example, you need to have a proper homepage. That's like a normal homepage where it's like a column of articles and a column of this. And you can't just have a search bar as your homepage, which is what we did. Right. But I was like, well, when I am doing on my podcast, I just want to look up a player real quick. I don't want to have to, scroll through all kinds of stuff. I just want to have the search bar right there. That's what I know people want. And, experts in website design told me that was a suboptimal way to go. And I had a confidence. I was like, no, I know I don't have a lot of experience doing this, but this is my vision and fuck it. We're going live with this. This is the way we're doing it. And now that I'm building something else, it's good to get this reinforcement.
Sure.
Right? Like listening to a Quentin Tarantino and his process and all the people that were telling him this isn't the way to do it. If you really want to lock in your advantage and ensure this thing is a hit, you don't want to take a risk with John Travolta. Remember Look Who's Talking? The Look Who's Talking guy? That's a big risk. Don't take a big. This is it. This script is amazing. Samuel L. Jackson says the best script he's ever read. Right. And I don't like, just like, hey, what if you if I saw John Hamm, I would ask him about the Carousel. Right. If I saw Quentin Tarantino, I'd ask him, where did you come up with that line? Were you literally reading the Bible? Did you comb through the Bible for like Ezekiel, whatever it was?
Yeah.
I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger. It's like, how did you come up with that shit? No one writes like that. That's impossible. And you could tell when Samuel L. Jackson read that, he was like, of course it's the greatest script I've ever read. Like, who finds that pulls that out of the Bible? Like, how the fuck do you find that? And Google wasn't around back then. It wasn't like you could just search vengeance and anger.
Yeah.
It was 1990. You can't do that. You can't just search Google and find cool lines. You can't chat GPT it. He had to literally read the Bible to find that line, right? And so to have that kind of confidence, it's like, no, I'm going to use a washed up actor as my lead. I'm going to say no to all the studio execs. I'm going to say no to Bruce Willis. I'm going to say no. And I'm just going to trust my vision for this movie. And and fuck it, we're going to do it live, and he just does it. He has very little directing experience, right? He's only directed one movie that was like in a warehouse, right? And so he just trusted himself going out into the unknown, doing a whole bunch of stuff he'd never done before, having all these people telling him to do it a different way, and him trusting his vision, having very little experience. That is fucking inspiring.
Absolutely inspiring, for sure.
So that backstory of Pulp Fiction that makes Pulp Fiction a real tough movie to beat, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
great answer. Yes, that next level thinking. I love it.
Pulp Fiction's a tough movie to beat. And then because I just rewatched it, and the thing if I could do anything, I would go back, and I would love to go see it in the theater, because I heard that when the dancing scene happened, that all people that were middle-aged were like jumping up out of their chairs, like, John Travolta's going to dance. He's really going to dance. He's taking his shoes off. Wait a second. Is he dancing?
That's awesome.
There are so many people that lived through the late 70s that saw that movie and were just like beyond ecstatic.
Yeah.
So if I could go back and watch it in the theater with those people, that would be a bunch of people that lived through the 70s. That would be amazing.
That's awesome.
Just to have that experience. And Quentin would do that. He would sneak into these theaters with like a hat on and watch people see. One thing I would love, like a hardcore fantasy gamer, I would love to have that experience where I'm actually behind them on their shoulder, watching them find Player Profiler for the first time and seeing their face. Like, to see their face, because I remember for many years, I was always hoping that I built it because that was what I wanted in a site.
Yeah.
And so I've never been able to see that in my life. I have no idea what that looks like, but I would love to see someone who's super into stats find the site for the first time. Like, oh my God, is this real?
That is fantastic. I love that. It's true. And again, like from my perspective, I discovered this entire. I was a fanatical fantasy commissioner. Loved the game for years and years and years. Always relied on the experts and analysts on the host platforms. And so, one thing led to another. I discovered this entire world. Discovered resources out there that I didn't know exist. I want people to discover resources like that, so they can fall deeper in love with the game, have a better experience playing fantasy. So that's why it was a pleasure to have you on here.
This was rapid fire, by the way.
Yeah, no, I mean,
is that a good rapid fire question? Favorite movie?
Yeah, the questions come out fast.
Movie.
Answers.
Fire.
No rapid fire on the answer. Rapid fire questions, not rapid fire answers. I love it.
Quentin Tarantino.
I love it. No, we had a good time. It was a pleasure to have you on here. Anything else you want to share before we close things out?
I don't think so. I think we've done. We have some new shows coming out, right? So I talked about Josh Larkey, the Dominator Show, Cody Carpentier with the Huddle. We are going to be at the Combine. Get on and Enduri. We got Maddie Kiwoom, and we're going to have a whole bunch of social media activity happening around the Combine. The Combine's coming right up Saturday.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be at the draft. We're going to be live streaming the draft. We got 15 plus people headed to Detroit. We have a big draft house. We're going to be doing a big live stream every single pick of the NFL draft. That's our Super Bowl is the draft. Nice. Really. So that's all stuff that we have a rookie guide coming out soon. It never stops, man.
Never stops. It's an incredible product. Tell listeners and viewers where they can find you on Twitter or X.
Yeah, fantasy_mansion, and I will be tweeting more. I promise.
Sounds like a plan. Now, will the fantasy community ever see you in Canton for the expo?
I think I'm going. Right. I mean, I think
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, we've talked a little bit, talked to Bob Lung about it at the conference, at the FSGA conference. It's something that I want to do. I really want to go. Everyone that's gone has loved it, even Ray Garvin, who tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
Right. But that's we're thinking about maybe having a booth there.
Nice.
And so it's things are in the works. But yeah, I want to go to Canton very, very much.
There we go.
It was an expo type event for fantasy, was something that desperately needed to happen. So I'm really just super happy that Bob and everyone behind that event had the idea and decided to just say we're doing it.
There we go. Let's look forward. I look forward to seeing you in Canton. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with next, because again, you keep crushing it. So best of luck to you in 2024 and beyond.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.